Every single day we all make hundreds of choices. But have you ever really stopped to think about the actual cost of those decisions? And I'm not just talking about the price tag. Turns out, understanding the hidden economics of cost is the secret to making smarter choices in just about everything, from running a business to, well, just living your daily life. So, here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll dig into the true cost of making a choice. Then, we'll look at the kinds of costs that change versus the ones that stay put. After that, we'll figure out how to find the price of the average thing, and then the cost of making just one more. And finally, we'll tie it all together to see how these ideas help you make way better decisions. All right, first up, let's talk about the true cost of choice. And I promise you, by the time we're done with this part, you're going to realize that the most important cost is almost never the one you actually see on the sticker. So just think about this for a second. When you decide to do one thing or buy one thing, what are you really truly giving up in that moment? This slide just lays it out perfectly. On the one hand, you've got the money cost. It's simple, right? A farmer spends 200 naira, he gets a new hoe. Easy. But then look at the right side. That's the opportunity cost. With that same 200 naira, he could have bought a cutlass instead. So the cutlass he didn't buy, that's the real cost of his choice. And that right there is what economists call opportunity cost. Some people even call it the true cost. It's just the value of the next best thing you didn't do. So here's the kicker. Every single choice you make, big or small, has an opportunity cost attached to it. Okay, so let's take that idea of true cost and see how it works in the real world of, say, business and production. We can now start breaking down the money costs into two really basic fundamental types. So it all starts with total cost, and it's pretty much what it sounds like. You add up every single penny a business has to spend to make something. And as you can see from the formula, it's made of two key ingredients: fixed costs and variable costs. So what's the difference? Well, it's pretty simple. Fixed costs, or overheads, are the bills that stay the same, whether you make one widget or 1,000 of them. Variable costs are the total opposite. They go up the more you make, and they go down the less you make. And these examples really help make it clear. The rent on your factory building, that's a fixed cost. You gotta pay it no matter what. Same goes for the big machine you bought. But the raw materials you need, or the wages for the people on the assembly line, totally variable. The more you produce, the more you've got to spend on that stuff. Okay, so we've got our total cost figured out. But that's a big top-level number. It doesn't really answer a super common question, which is, hey, how much does it actually cost us to make just one of these things? To figure that out, well, we need to find the average. And that brings us to average cost. The formula is really straightforward. You just take your total cost and you divide it by the total number of things you produced. And boom, that gives you that nice, clean per unit cost. Now let's look at this table from the source. As the farm's output goes up from 1 to 5 units, just watch what happens to that average cost column. It plummets. It goes from 140 all the way down to about 39. This is a perfect example of what people call economies of scale. As you make more, it gets cheaper to make each one. But here's where it gets really powerful. Knowing the average is good, but the real secret to making smart business decisions comes from asking a slightly different question. Should we make just one more? And this is where marginal cost comes in. See, it's not about the average of everything you've already made. It's only about the cost of making the very next item. It's that incremental cost. I absolutely love this example because it's so crystal clear. The cost to make that 21st tuber of yam, it wasn't 60, and it wasn't the average cost of all the others. The specific marginal cost for that one extra unit was just 10 naira. Okay, so we have all our pieces now: opportunity cost, fixed and variable costs, average cost, and now marginal cost. So for the grand finale, let's see how they all connect with each other, because that relationship, well, that's everything. So we're back at the farm again, but this time, look, we've added in the marginal cost. Now just focus on the average cost and marginal cost columns. As you go down the rows, as production goes up, do you start to see a relationship there? Here it is. This is the first key insight. As long as the average cost is falling, the marginal cost, the cost of that next unit, is always going to be lower than the average. It's kind of like your grades, right? If your average grade is an 80 and you get a 70 on your next test, what happens? Your average gets pulled down. That marginal cost is literally pulling the average down with it. And this leads us to the golden rule of production costs.
The exact point where the marginal cost finally catches up and is equal to the average cost, that's the sweet spot. That's the point where your average cost is at its absolute lowest. For any business, finding this point is the key to being as efficient as possible.
And please, don't for a second think this is all just abstract theory. I mean, look at this. This is an actual engineering exam paper. And what's the very first question? Define opportunity cost and explain why it matters to engineers. Yeah, when you're deciding between multi-billion-dollar projects, you better believe understanding the true cost of your choices is absolutely critical.
So let's do a quick recap. The true cost of anything is what you give up. That's opportunity cost. All production costs are built from two blocks: fixed costs that stay stable and variable costs that change. And the two most powerful ways to look at them are average cost, the cost per unit, and marginal cost, the cost of the next unit. And understanding how those two relate is what separates the good decisions from the truly great ones. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Now that you know the difference between the average cost of something and the cost of just one more, how is that going to change the way you think about the next decision you have to make? It's a really powerful question to ask yourself. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.